Hey guys, Larry with Handheld Rehab here. Today we got an iPhone 7 home button that is ripped. It's actually, this one's pretty bad. It's ripped in the back and actually ripped up along the cable, which is broken several of the lines. I think I have 5 lines down on this thing right now. This one's pretty bad. Generally I wouldn't fix this one, but I got the checking, and I think I can make this work. So we'll go through real fast and do some Diode measurements. Here we've got 860, 785, 785, and this line is down, and this one runs along in here, so that's obviously why it's down. 498, 498, and this line is also down, and this line also runs on the second layer through here. This line's down. It's the third line that runs under this damage here. These 2 lines are down, and they're actually the 2 top lines here. And this line's good. This line's good. So that right there's actually 387, 706, and then 456. And all 3 of these are going to be 456. So we've got 5 lines down on it. And what the game plan here is to use one of the G-Lon home button flex repairs. And the reason this one right here I started not to work on it is because generally what you want to do with these repair kits, you want to be able to cut off all of the damaged flex. And so here, as you can see, I can probably, if I wanted to take a razor blade, I could probably get all the damage off. But the way these are made is you want to overlap this flex on top of this one on top of the second layer. And so these pads here that you see are gold, are for the top layer, and then these pads here are for the second layer. And so the only way you can make contact is by overlapping that and putting flux on it and adding solder, and the solder will it'll want to actually pull backwards on your flex and make contact with all these points here. So right now I've got 5 lines down, 2 here on top. The 2 on top I got to make jumpers for anyway. It's just the way that the flex is designed. You got 2 places here, and I'm hoping I'm staying in focus here in the where you can see everything. But there's 2 lines here that goes to those 2 lines that you can see there. Both of those are currently down, and I have 3 other lines down, and the 3 lines that are down are these 3 lines here, and all the other lines on the FPC right now are still making continuity. So the reason I want to do this are these 3 lines right here are really hard to make jumpers for, and I dug down just a little bit before I started my video right here in this little hole right here, and it looks like these three lines are still intact, even though we're ripped sideways here. It looks like the rip comes over far enough that these 3 lines are still good. And so what I'm hoping to do is be able to cut this off, put this new connector repair on there, and be able to get continuity back on those 3 lines. If I can get those 3 lines and everything goes well, I should be able to save this home button. So that is the go. And so now we're going to figure out where we want to cut this thing at. I really think I'm going to cut it back pretty far, and I'm going to have to be careful whenever I am scraping that I don't, because it's 2 layers. Generally when you scrape, you can scrape like this, but because this layer is torn and it's kind of, this side is higher, it's going to be really easy to damage this piece. So I'm really going to have to be careful with this. So I think what I'm going to do is cut it somewhere along in here. And no, actually I think I want to go back here. No, let's leave it as long as we can right now. So we're going to cut it here. And whenever I cut these, I use a razor blade and I make sure I go all the way down and make sure I've got a clean cut. And so that is no longer, so hopefully we can get this thing repaired. Now it's going to take quite a bit of time consuming scraping here, so you may see me pause the video, you may see me, I may decide to do you know, something on the video here, like a time lapse or something, and then once I get back to where I want to solder, then we'll show you what the finished piece looks like before we start soldering, and we'll do some soldering on the video. But this is probably going to take me maybe 20-30 minutes to get this thing the way I want it. Okay, one thing I can say about these home buttons, if you're going to be repairing them, make sure you use new razor blades. I use just a regular standard razor blade. I've got 3 open here. You want to make sure you're using sharp razor blades. You don't want to use dull razor blades because it's going to have a tendency to grab and rip these traces. And when you're dealing with these little fine traces, you don't want to rip them. Now these two on top right here, the way this G-Lon repair kit is made to do, you're supposed to jump this line to there and this line to there. Well, that's super difficult to do. So usually what I end up doing on the top layer is I'll jump this pad over to this resistor, and I think it goes to this side. I'll have to verify that. And then this line, I'll actually come back here and I'll dig a little bit until I get a little bit of a copper trace on back up in here and tin it and run it all the way up here. And I don't even use these right here. I don't use them at all. This trace right here, the one on the left side on the top, actually ends up running back either under this IC or on a pad beside it. And the same thing with the 3 on the back. That's the reason it's ideal if you can use this. Otherwise, you're going to end up having to remove the turtle IC and try to get rid of all this clear, I don't know, it looks like hot melt or underfill or whatever you want to call it. You have to get rid of all this to be able to go in and tin those pads and make jumpers, and it's just a real nightmare. So hopefully we can make this work. And one thing I'm going to be focusing on whenever I'm going through this is I'm going to be focusing on making sure I can pick up these three traces right here on this flex. If I decide I can't pick these 3 traces up here, I may cut back further and may keep cutting back until I pick these 3 traces up and make sure I get good diode measurements on them. So that's what we're going to do. Well, that wasn't supposed to happen, but let's see what we got here. Let's keep going and see what we end up with. Alright, so I just went through and checked diode measurements on it, and so this is kind of what you want your button to look like. Not really, but it's just what way it turned out. So you want to, whenever you cut it back, you want your first layer cut back more than your second layer, and you want to leave a little bit of this mask, or this I don't know what you call it, this layer between the two boards. You don't want to go all the way back, so whenever you start soldering this, it's going to short to this. This little chunk that came out whenever I was scraping this button, like I said, it's damaged pretty bad right here. It's really weak. That layer is not attached here. It never was attached there after they ripped it. So while I was scraping it, it just got weak enough, and I was cleaning with some alcohol, it just got weak enough where it came loose. But that is actually ground, and so you have ground here and here, so that's not going to matter. I had to go back and check ZXW. I knew there was two lines that ran through here, this one and this one. I wasn't for sure if that was one of them or not, but it's actually going to help me probably because that is gone, because it was actually sticking up a little higher, and I was kind of worried about how where's my damn tweezers. I was actually, oh, I have them in my hand. I was actually worried about how the flex was going to lay down, the replacement flex was going to lay down there. And so now what we're going to do is, this is the replacement flex, and as you can see, it's transparent. And so what you have to do, they make this thing longer than what you need, and depending on how much you have to cut off, you cut it to length. And as you can see here, hopefully my video shows it, you can see these lines go up and start going north there. So you have to decide how much you need. And I've got this one cut back pretty short, short being as long as I can get it. And so you just have to look, and you want to cut twice if you have to, because once you cut it, it's too short. It's no good to you then. I've got a couple that way. So I mean, somewhere right in here covers all my lines. You can see through that. You can see those three right here. So somewhere along in there is where I'm wanting to cut this thing at. Maybe even in there. Where do I want to cut it at? Yeah, I could actually even, since I cut it back, you always want to cut as close to the FPC as you can. That way you can go back and rework it if you need to. I could actually cut all this off, and I still have enough room to go rework it one more time, maybe even twice if I'm careful. But that's the reason you always want to leave as much length as you can on your original home button. You can these right here are, I don't know, $1 a piece or something, but this home button, once it's screwed. And sometimes you may have a problem soldering it. So I want to cut this, I guess. I'm going to cut quite a bit of it off. And this, I do the same thing. I make sure I use a sharp razor blade. I'm going to cut at least half of it off. And make sure you're centered up. And I mash down and I don't quit cutting until it's cut all the way in half. That way I get a clean cut on it. Get out of the way. Let's go back and see what that looks like.
Here's your tacos, baby.
Okay, give them a minute. What are you doing?
I gotta get my stuff out for her.
Oh. So I'm gonna go back and cut them again. Okay, I'm gonna cut it again. My traces are straight. They're not curved at all. So I need to make sure I go back to where the traces are straight. So I'm gonna cut here. I think is what I want. Okay. I can't even see those traces there, so okay. So we're going to lay that up there, line it up, and solder that in. Alright.